In Fulshire, Texas, a quiet and serene town, life moves at a relaxed pace. The community exudes tranquility, with neatly trimmed lawns lining the streets and well-kept homes dotting the neighborhood. Neighbors greet each other warmly, and children play in the sun-drenched yards. As evening falls, a warm orange sunset bathes the streets, and the town seems to be wrapped in a peaceful, idyllic atmosphere. Everything appears perfect and harmonious, as if nothing could ever disturb this calm. In the midst of this seemingly peaceful community was the Sheets family, admired by many. Christy Sheets, a 43-year-old mother, was seen as the epitome of a loving wife and devoted mother. She was active in community events, had a wide social circle, and friends often spoke of her unwavering dedication to her two daughters and her commitment to her family. On social media, Christy frequently shared snapshots of joyful moments spent with her family. In these pictures, she was always smiling, embracing her husband Jason and their daughters. To the outside world, the Sheets family appeared to be the embodiment of the American dream, happy, stable, and harmonious. Yet behind this perfect facade, cracks were beginning to form. Although everything seemed fine on the surface, the Sheets family wasn't as happy as people imagined. Neighbors occasionally overheard arguments from their house, but these minor disturbances were quickly masked by the family's seemingly normal daily life. Beneath Christy's smile, there appeared to be a deep, unspoken pain and confusion. Friends in the community sometimes sensed her emotional instability, but no one could foresee the impending disaster that these hidden family tensions would unleash. This was the calm before the storm, a tension that was hard to detect but impossible to ignore. No one could have imagined that this seemingly happy family was on the brink of plunging into irreversible darkness. The internal pressure within the Sheets family had been quietly building for some time. To outsiders, they still appeared to be a harmonious and happy family, but in reality, the relationship between Christy and her husband, Jason, was beginning to crack. What once seemed like a stable marriage had gradually deteriorated, with frequent arguments and conflicts emerging between the couple. Jason was busy with work, while Christy increasingly felt her life slipping out of control, her mental state deteriorating day by day. Her emotional swings became unpredictable, and the atmosphere at home grew tenser with each passing moment. In the midst of these arguments, the couple's two daughters, Taylor and Madison, often found themselves as innocent bystanders. They witnessed the escalating fights between their parents and began to feel a deep sense of unease. Christy's emotional outbursts were especially alarming, leaving everyone in the family uncertain about what might happen next. Her rage was often directed at Jason, with increasing criticism and blame hurled his way. Jason, on the other hand, felt powerless, desperately trying to salvage their crumbling marriage, but finding it harder and harder to regain control. Christy's emotional instability went beyond normal marital conflict. Her mental health had clearly started to deteriorate. According to family members and friends, she exhibited extreme mood swings, quickly shifting from anger to sadness and even showing signs of self-destructive tendencies. Her grip on life seemed to be slipping, with frequent mental breakdowns becoming more apparent. Those around her began to realize that she might need professional psychological help. However, neither Jason nor their two daughters were truly able to help her out of this emotional abyss. Their daily lives were increasingly overshadowed by an invisible cloud of pressure and fear. Amid this marital crisis, Christy's obsession became particularly evident. Her feelings for Jason were not just rooted in love, but also in a strong desire to control him. She wanted the family to function according to her will, and especially in the marriage, she expected Jason to always stay by her side. However, Jason's calmness and emotional distance only made her feel more anxious and angry, as she felt the marriage slipping away from her grasp. This sense of losing control became unbearable for her, and her heart was filled with resentment toward her husband. To Christy, the breakdown of their marriage wasn't just about losing a partner. It meant losing her role as the dominant force within the family. She couldn't bear the idea of losing her status in Jason's life, and she even began to fear that she might be abandoned. Driven by this twisted mentality, her desire to control Jason grew more intense. She longed to make him recognize her importance, even if her methods were destructive. In the midst of this crisis, Jason and their daughters were left feeling helpless. They didn't know how to handle Christie's emotional volatility, nor could they fully understand the pain and obsession that consumed her. The arguments flared up with increasing frequency, and the atmosphere at home became suffocating. But no one seemed to know how to resolve these mounting tensions. Christie's emotions were like a ticking time bomb, ready to trigger an unpredictable catastrophe at any moment. For this family, the real storm was about to strike, and it was already beyond their control. June 24, 2016, seemed like an ordinary summer day for the Sheets family. Christy Sheets spent most of the day with her family, and on the surface, everything appeared normal. That morning, Christy and her two daughters, Taylor and Madison, stayed at home, going about their usual activities. There were no obvious signs that hinted at the looming disaster. Everything felt so calm and relaxed, as if it were just another peaceful day. However, beneath this calm facade, Christy's emotions and long-buried pain had reached a breaking point. Her mental state was on the verge of collapse, and the pressure inside her, fueled by resentment toward her husband, Jason, had gradually consumed what little remained of her rationality. Although her family didn't notice anything strange, Christy had already formulated a horrific plan. She was going to hurt the ones she loved most, her daughters, as a way to inflict unbearable pain on her husband. That day, Christy made some strange and perplexing decisions, and her behavior grew increasingly bizarre. Earlier in the day, she told her daughters how much she loved them, a chilling farewell disguised as a heartfelt gesture. She also deliberately chose to wear a bright red dress, which, unbeknownst to anyone, symbolized her readiness for the violence she had planned. Christy had decided that today would be the day she enacted her plan, and the red dress was meant to be her armor of revenge, foreshadowing the bloodshed to come. In the afternoon, the Sheets family gathered for what Christy called a family meeting. No one knew the true purpose behind this meeting. Christy brought her husband and daughters together, ostensibly for a family discussion, but in her mind, this was the final stage of her twisted plan. She appeared calm, her emotions seemingly under control, but only she knew the true reason for this gathering. In reality, this family meeting was a critical moment in Christy's scheme. Her heart was filled with resentment and a burning desire for revenge against Jason. Despite her deep love for her daughters, she had made a terrible decision in her distorted emotional state. She would take their lives to cause Jason the maximum amount of suffering. To her, this was not only a way to end her own pain, but also a way to destroy her husband's world, ensuring that he would live in endless grief and guilt after losing their daughters. Christy knew that killing her daughters would devastate Jason. As a mother, she was fully aware of how much their daughters meant to him. Taylor and Madison were Jason's pride and joy, smart, beautiful, and the light of his life. By targeting them, Christy intended to inflict the deepest wound possible, ensuring that Jason would experience a loss so profound that he could never recover. As the day progressed, Christy's plan inched closer to its irreversible conclusion. What seemed like a peaceful day on the outside was, in reality, the final chapter of her vengeful scheme. In the moments when her family was least expecting it, the hidden danger beneath the calm surface would soon erupt into unimaginable violence. The afternoon of June 24, 2016, in the Sheets household was filled with an eerie calm. As the family meeting unfolded, this seemingly ordinary day was about to turn into an unthinkable nightmare. Inside the room, Christy Sheets appeared composed, but within her, a tragedy was brewing. Suddenly, she got up and walked to another room, returning with a gun in hand. The moment she picked up the weapon, the house descended into chaos and fear. Taylor and Madison, her two daughters, went from confused to terrified in an instant. The young girls couldn't comprehend what their mother was doing, much less believe that she would point a gun at them. Fear consumed them as they pleaded for her to calm down, trying desperately to escape the impending disaster. Jason, their father, was equally stunned. He had never imagined that family disputes could escalate to such extremes. Standing helpless in the face of his wife's actions, Jason realized that no words or actions could stop what was about to happen. Christy, overcome by her emotions, was beyond control. Her hands shook as she pulled the trigger, and the first gunshot echoed through the quiet suburban neighborhood. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. The house was filled with nothing but screams and chaos. Taylor, the eldest daughter, fell to the ground as blood poured from her body. Madison, witnessing the horror, was paralyzed with fear and attempted to flee, but there was nowhere to hide from her mother's fury and despair. Christy, driven by rage, chased Madison and fired again. This second shot claimed the life of another innocent girl. The two sisters lay in pools of blood, and the once warm and loving home had become the scene of a brutal murder. The serene family living room had transformed into a place of unimaginable violence, and the sound of gunfire shattered the peaceful suburban community. Neighbors, alarmed by the sound of gunshots, immediately dialed 911. As the shots continued, they peered out their windows and caught glimpses of Christy with a gun, and the lifeless bodies of her daughters. The quiet neighborhood quickly became engulfed in fear and panic. People evacuated their homes, hoping to avoid becoming victims themselves, while anxiously waiting for the police to arrive. Soon, law enforcement and paramedics arrived at the scene. When they reached the Sheets' home, they were met with a horrifying sight. Christy stood at her doorstep, still holding the gun, visibly agitated, while her two daughters lay lifeless on the ground. The officers ordered Christy to drop her weapon, but she refused to comply, even threatening further harm. With the situation escalating, the police were left with no choice but to shoot Christy, killing her on the spot. The tragedy had unfolded so quickly that no one had time to process what had just happened. The entire ordeal lasted only a few minutes, yet it had irreversibly altered the fate of the family and the community. With Christy now dead, the nightmare had finally ended. But the blood-stained ground, the lifeless bodies, and the hollowed-out family home would forever remain etched in the minds of those who witnessed the horror. Investigators later discovered disturbing posts from Christy on social media, revealing that her mental state had been deteriorating for some time. However, the events had escalated so rapidly that no one could have predicted that things would spiral out of control so quickly. Though she had shown some signs of instability, no one could have truly grasped the depth of her pain and anger. As the details of the case emerged, a chilling truth came to light. Christy's motive for killing her daughters was not born out of hatred for them, but rather as part of a twisted revenge plot against her husband, Jason. She knew that the loss of their two daughters would cause him immeasurable grief. For her, this was the ultimate act of vengeance. She was aware of how deeply Jason loved their daughters, and by robbing him of that love, she intended to subject him to a lifetime of suffering and guilt. Neighbors, reflecting on their interactions with Christy in the days leading up to the murders, recalled that she seemed entirely normal. No one could have imagined that this seemingly average mother would one day unleash such horrific violence, killing her own daughters in cold blood. Beneath her calm exterior lay a deep well of pain and fury, and in the moment she pulled the trigger, it all came spilling out. This murder not only shocked the local community, but also garnered widespread attention across the country. Christy Sheets, once a regular mother and wife, had become consumed by her inner turmoil, ultimately leading to a tragedy that no one could have foreseen. The shooting left a trail of devastation, prompting a painful reflection on what could have driven this family to the brink of destruction. In that irreversible moment, everything changed forever. In the wake of Christy Sheets's tragic murder of her daughters, The entire community was engulfed in shock and mourning. Neighbors took to social media to express their disbelief, struggling to comprehend how a family they once saw as ordinary had become the center of such a horrific event. Many recalled Christy and her daughters participating in community activities, lamenting the fragility and unpredictability of life. Groups gathered to hold candlelight vigils, expressing their sorrow for the lost lives and reflecting on the deep sadness of the family's tragedy. Jason Sheets's despair also garnered significant attention. Facing the loss of his wife and 2 daughters, he appeared profoundly vulnerable in the wake of the family's collapse and his personal anguish. Although he tried to present a strong front, he could not shake the pain of his loss. Media coverage followed his journey through grief, and many reached out to offer their support and concern. However, this care could not fill the void left in his heart. What he had lost was not only family but also his hope for the future. This tragedy sparked widespread discussion in society about domestic violence and mental health issues. Across the community, people began to recognize the importance of mental health. The demand for psychological counseling services surged, with many seeking help to better understand how to prevent such tragedies from happening again. Community organizations initiated related educational programs aimed at raising awareness about mental health and assisting those experiencing emotional turmoil. People realized that understanding and supporting those around them could be key to preventing tragedies. As the discussions deepened, society began to pay closer attention to the warning signs of domestic violence. People no longer viewed family conflicts as private matters, but actively advocated for seeking external help when necessary. Christy Sheets's story became not just a tragedy, but also a cautionary tale about protecting family members and prioritizing mental health. While the devastating loss could never be replaced, it prompted the community to reassess the importance of familial relationships and foster a renewed sense of hope for mutual care and support in the future.